Yeah, I really have to know. Whose bright idea was it to put the mid-season finale on episode 9 of a 13-episode season? The math just ain't mathin'. What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Leverage Redemption Season 2, Episode 7, The Big Rig Job. So first of all, I will say I'm going to be tackling this one in 3 episodes instead of 2, mainly because I knew at some point I'd have to do 3 instead of 2 because there's 13 episodes. I just wasn't sure where, but then looking at the release date, it does seem like the 9th episode and the 10th episode were a couple of weeks apart. So I'm guessing the 9th episode is going to be kind of maybe a mid-season finale. So yeah, we'll tackle 7, 8, and 9. But for this one, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. This one I couldn't take seriously at all. Right off the bat, the 2 kids of this one guy, who apparently was a nice guy, and that feels like there should have been more there, should have been more focus on even just trying to get the kids to sort of realize their father was a good man, and they're kind of ruining what he wanted to do for him. That feels like it would have been a much better story. But right off the bat, I knew that wasn't going to be what happens. Because right away, they are 2 of the most obnoxious, over-the-top, evil villains in the show so far. The guy saying that he's there for his truck, both of them synchronized maniacal laughter. Not just like, okay, sure. Nothing subtle. It has to be, it was ridiculous. Right off the bat. On top of that, they make her a streamer, or an influencer, whatever you want to call her, just that obnoxious personality that you see whenever you go on Instagram. So she's already obnoxious and over the top as a villain. Then she's playing the obnoxious over the top influencer. Where am I supposed to care about these people? Where am I supposed to get invested in the story? Because you have 2 ridiculously cartoonish villains. Both of them act like they are in a kid's show. You might as well have put them on, what is it, Lazy Town? Is that where the girl with the pink hair and the one evil guy with the big mustache, isn't that that show? That's what they act like they're on. And what's really frustrating about this is that's the whole episode. There's nothing redeeming about this. They try to have this nice message at the end. They're giving these kids these toys. Yeah, that could be nice, but I didn't feel anything else in this episode, so I don't feel anything at the end. You didn't get me invested in this episode at all. And honestly, wasn't much funny in this either. Like, I don't remember laughing one bit, and a lot of it came down to you kicked off the episode with these 2 obnoxious little brats that are supposed to be the main threat. And ooh, they've got ties to the Dixie Mafia. Ooh, oh no. Who gives a shit? They're both so annoying, I don't really care. I don't feel threatened by either of them at all. On top of that, once again, the turning the tables on the bad guy, no real satisfaction to it. We don't see the girl getting arrested. She just gets to hear from Sophie that her brother's been arrested and that they're going to come arrest her too. And she has to sit there. She made that noise like 20 times in this episode. Shut up. Before the brother, he gets knocked out by Elliot. Don't know why he's just letting Elliot into the truck. He's just like, oh, okay. Slammed head on the steering wheel. And then Elliot just gets him to move to the back. He's like, oh, okay. And moves back there. I'm like, what is happening? And then the 2 guys show up trying to run the truck off the road. Why? Where's Elliot going with it to begin with? And why is he like, whoa, don't hit the truck. Don't hit my massive wheels that are as big as your car. Please don't do that. They've got spikes on the wheels. It's going to do more damage to your car than it would to the semi. Why? Why are you swerving out of the way? And then somehow he stops, calls the police, gets out of the truck. Brianna gets out of the truck. She like burns a hole through the vent and then sets one of the handbags on fire and tosses it in. All of that before the guys turn back around and get back to the truck? Did they like run the truck off the road and then decide to do like a victory lap around the state before they returned? What the hell? There's just so much about this that doesn't make sense. It wasn't entertaining. It wasn't well set up. And again, the villains are basically cartoons. And I can't take this seriously. They're jeopardizing the lives of all these truckers. And trucking is a pretty big business in our country. So you're trying to put all these truckers out of business, kind of a big deal. They're also apparently trying to stop these toys getting to kids, which is shitty in and of itself. So there's a lot about this that should be more real. And again, you got this idea that these 2 kids of a guy who was a very generous man, who did so much to try to help out getting all these toys to kids, did so much for his truckers. His kids take over the business. They're all about the money. They get in bed with the Dixie Mafia. I feel like there's a story there for these kids to sort of wake up and realize maybe we're in this for the wrong reasons. We didn't get anything about that. They were just a couple of asshole kids we just want to make money. The girl wants to be popular. She wants to get her Instagram fame. That's not interesting. Or even, this could be an instance, since they're in bed with the Dixie Mafia, maybe this can be an instance where the Mafia saw that the dad was out of the picture, and they saw an opportunity and came in and threatened the kids to push their stuff, to move their guns. That could have been a possibility, but you make the kids so unlikable, even if that was the case, not going to care. But we could have gotten that, where the kids, maybe they were in it for money, they saw this as an opportunity, like, oh yeah, cool, this is a good way for us to up our business a little bit, and not realizing how bad the Mafia actually is. It's more ignorance than it is greed, but you don't do that. You just make them over-the-top assholes, and so it's just not interesting, and it's not satisfying when they get the tables turned on them. So I realize this is a lot more aggressive than I've been for some of the cartoony villains in the show so far, but I think I've gotten to that point where I'm sort of sick of it now. I'm sick of the cartoony villains. I'm sick of all the over-the-top goofy moments that really just takes me out of the show. Makes me feel like I'm watching a Disney Channel show. I'm already sick of that. These characters were so over the top. It's almost like the villains this season have been turned up to an 11 on goofiness. These villains were turned up to 15 on that scale. They were so unrealistic. I just had no fun with this at all. And that's probably the biggest downgrade this season, because at least in most of the episodes, I've been able to have some fun with it. And this one, I didn't at all. Even the one woman who apparently was very close and basically in a relationship with their dad, even that story went basically nowhere. It was predictable from the first moment. I was like, let me guess. She's going to turn out to be a decent woman. She's probably going to be the only person who really knows how the guy ran the business before. She's going to take over, pretty much. Even when they had that little fake out moment where she's talking about getting a Christmas present, like, all right, well, this is probably going to turn into something wholesome, but they're going to suspect her for a second. Sure enough. So if this is the worst episode this season, then I guess that's good that it doesn't get much worse than this. But this was definitely down there as far as one of the worst episodes that at least I can remember watching in these first two seasons. Again, it's been a while since I watched the first season, so maybe there were a couple that frustrated me more than this, but this one was pretty bad on many different levels. And for a Christmas episode as well, it should be a lot more enjoyable. But with all that being said, we move on to the next one, so I'll see you guys there. And now episode 8, the Turkish prisoner job. So this one was better than the last one. Unfortunately, where it falls apart is at the end. There is a lot about it that feels kind of sloppily put together, and once again, the villains turn into cartoons by the end of it. It's interesting because they were pretty downplayed for most of the episode, but then at the end is when all of a sudden they start acting a lot more goofy out of really nowhere. What's interesting is they started to play up that maybe the guy of the two might be a little bit more sympathetic. Like he's more so doing it because he feels like he has to, whereas the girl's a lot more, no, this is what we do. This is the only way to make things work. But then by the end of it, she goes over the top with it, and he goes over the top with his wimpy, scaredy side, and it all just sort of falls apart in that sense. On top of that, a couple of the other moments that stood out to me is just not working in this episode. Brianna has her moments where she can be a lot more fun to have on the team, interesting personality, and then sometimes I just watch her and go, do they really think that's funny? Do they really think that's entertaining to have her act that way? And her tossing the alligator or the fake alligator into the water and getting up on the like what about that is funny? What about that is meant to be entertaining? Because I watch that and it feels cringy. It feels like, oh, that's gonna make the kids laugh. But what kids are gonna be watching this and understanding these dirty cops that are planting evidence on people and sending them off to prison? What kids are gonna understand that? So kids aren't gonna be watching this show. And yet that reaction from Brianna is only going to make kids laugh because it's not funny. It's, again, very goofy. On top of that, you throw in the added stupid moment where apparently they find the house where the money actually is. Why? It felt so unrealistic to have this urban legend actually be true, and then they solve it and give the guy the money who got arrested at the beginning of all this. It just felt like they wanted to go that extra length to be like, hey man, here you go. Here's some extra money to compensate you for what you had to deal with. And instead of finding a more realistic way to handle it, they just said, but what if this urban legend turned out to be true? And the team solved it and gave him the money. Ooh, that would be great, wouldn't it? Yeah, in hunky-dory happy land. In our real world, urban legends typically don't turn out to be totally true. Maybe there was some truth to it, but more than likely, there would not be $10 million hiding in the walls of a house. That just doesn't happen. So once again, another episode where all these stupid, goofy, unrealistic moments happen that just take me out of the episode. The reason why I'm not as angry and upset about this one is the villains were a lot more downplayed at the beginning. So I was not instantly put off by it, and it was kind of interesting to see Harry run his first job. There were some decent moments between Harry and Sophie, him trying to figure out how to help this guy. He's also working with, I'm pretty sure this girl was in the first season, if I'm remembering correctly. She wanted to do something to help, and the team kind of worked with her and helped her realize how she can help in the system, if I'm not mistaken. Might have to go back and watch the first season to remember some of these stories. But I did like Harry's story in this one. It's his first time running a job. Just like with Brianna, he had his hiccups. I will say the fact that he took the blame for what happened with Romero in the courthouse, and like, oh, I didn't account for the limp. I understand that that's something he maybe should have thought of, but that's also something that Parker and Elliot can look at and go, he's limping. We need to do something about this, or we need to come up with a reason why he's limping, or we just need to carry him out because he's not going to be able to keep up, and it's going to be very obvious that something's wrong with him. And instead they just sort of walk away and leave him all by himself to get captured again. So I understand Harry should have thought about the fact that he might have a limp after getting beaten up. Elliot and Parker are also right there. They can see him limping. They should have said something or done something to help solve that situation. So I did feel it was a little weird that kind of felt like everybody was just sort of in agreement. Like, yeah, Harry should have thought of that. Also, something that I've not talked about, I've thought about it every single episode, and I forget to talk about it in the reviews, but this one, it happened at the end of the episode, so it's stuck in my mind a bit more right now. They have all these conversations right within earshot of other people, and nobody ever seems to catch on. And I understand sometimes for TV shows, you have to raise the volume of your voice to make the audience hear without actually speaking as lowly as you would be in public to not be heard. But there are some times whenever they are right next to somebody else and they are talking in their comms and nobody reacts. Nobody is like, "What? Who are you talking to?" A couple of the moments that stand out in my mind right off the bat, you have Sophie talking in her comms whenever she had the daughter of the one, I can't remember where they were from now, but the European country, he was like the head general of that country. She had the daughter crying in her arms, and she's talking to the team while the daughter's crying in her arms. And I get the fact the daughter, again, she wasn't a big fan of the dad, so maybe she wouldn't really think anything of it, but it still feels weird that she's doing this in front of somebody who might say something in front of the dad. Also, when they had the secret society that they got into, Sophie is standing around 3 or 4 guys, and she's just talking. And I get she could be whispering, but still, the guys are going to be sitting there going, why are you whispering? Who are you whispering to? Why are you talking at all right now? We should be paying attention. We're doing our thing, our weird bull thing. But this one, the reason it stuck out is because at the end of the episode, Harry is talking to the one lawyer, and she starts asking him how the cops got in there, as if he would know right in front of the judge. Like, wait until you get out to the hallway. So that way she's not like, wait, why would he know anything about it? But they don't. They just start the conversation right away, and it feels weird. It's a minor nitpick because obviously this is a show, but those moments take me out of it more than you already have with all your goofy antics. So why can't you set these scenes up to be a little bit more realistic? Honestly, it's not even something I would really even think about more than likely if the rest of the show was so good, but because there are all these other moments that take me out of it, you throw that final scene in and you expect me to go, oh yeah, that's totally normal to talk about that stuff, and she wouldn't ask why they're asking that question. Yeah, that makes sense. So I know I keep beating this dead horse, but the lack of realism in the show is really frustrating, and it's something I can't find myself getting over. Because as fantastical as some of the episodes were in the original show, it still felt grounded. This show does not. This feels like it wants to be a Disney Channel show. It wants to be animated, even. There's so much about it that feels like a cartoon, and it's losing me because of that. I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way. I will say, based on the IMDB ratings, I might be, because they're still fairly high. Even the Christmas episode, I thought that one would be pretty low, but no, still pretty high. So maybe I'm the only one that has issues with it, but I just can't get invested if they're going to not take anything seriously. But that about does it for this episode. So on to the final of these 3, and I think the mid-season finale. I'll see you guys there. And finally, episode 9, The Pyramid Job. So this one was much, much better, and a lot of that is just down to we finally had our first good villain of the season, and that is Deborah. Ironically, her husband was very much the same as what I've seen from a lot of the villains. Over the top, goofy, ridiculous. I mean, even his reaction at the end whenever the cops start showing up and he's pressed up against the window like, no, please, stop. So much of it was just ridiculous and not in a good way. It's the same goofy shit that brings me out of a lot of this. But Deborah was actually pretty well done. There were a couple times which got a little over the top, like her calling for security I thought was a little weird, and then her reaction whenever she realized that she was being filmed and like pushing the camera aside, it did feel pretty poorly done. But up until the end, both of them played their roles very, very well. Like even the husband, he wasn't over the top until he and Harry started to get into the little weird fight. At that point, that's when I'm like, okay, so this is just a cartoon character now. But even before that, he was very much downplayed, felt very genuine, and she as well was very genuine, even all the way through to the end. There was the camera push that, again, felt weird. But even her reaction is kind of a resigned defeat because she realized she'd been caught. But she still had enough about her to kind of throw that last little jab in of, hey, I knew what you were talking about there. You were talking about a daughter. It was just a nice little moment that it made her feel like a real villain. It made her feel like a real person, and I appreciated that so much. But before we get to some of the side stuff, one final thing about it that's kind of a nitpick, but it's, I think, something that I just am frustrated with in general. It's not just this show. I feel like this cliche of the bad guy just shouting their plans and getting recorded while shouting their plans, it's frustrating, but it's especially frustrating whenever the bad guys have been shown to be very intelligent. And even if she didn't have this live recording set up to just automatically happen, which I don't know how that makes sense. But even if she didn't have that set up, if you knew that she was trying to play you, I feel like you would suspect that maybe she was trying to get you to say some stuff that would make you look bad. Especially whenever you are the owner of a pyramid scheme, you definitely don't want to say anything that's going to make you look bad in front of your customers, because that is all you have. Without them, as she kind of inadvertently pointed out, she wouldn't be able to be held up by anything. And yet she still trash talks him with the lady that is clearly trying to set her up for something right there. So I feel like it's already a bit of a cliche, but especially for somebody like Deborah who is intelligent, who saw through Sophie and what she was trying to do, I feel like she'd be smarter than to blatantly say all of this in front of her, just in case Sophie had something on her that could be recording her. But with that out of the way, focusing on some of the side stuff going on. First of all, Parker had some nice moments talking to this one woman, and she has a very blunt way of speaking, but I think it worked in this moment to kind of tell her how it was, because she needed, I think, a little bit of tough love in that moment. I think her name was Miranda. Sometimes you just have to have somebody tell it straight to your face, like what you're doing wrong. And that can be enough to kind of help you go, yeah, maybe I should stop. Brianna's little side story kind of rode the line from being funny and being time wasting. Because there were a couple of moments early on with this guy, I don't remember his name now, but the one that she kind of helped realize that this was all a pyramid scheme. There were a couple of moments that were funny in that when he started picking up on the obvious clues that were there. But it kind of felt like one of those jokes that the first couple of times, it made me chuckle. And then the third time, I was like, okay, I mean, I get it. I see what we're doing here. And then the fourth time we went back to this, and I realized, oh no, we are focusing on this story. He's actually getting a character arc in this, and he's going to quit at some point. Why? Why is that important? This company's going under anyway. So why do we need to focus on, oh, this guy, he needs to figure out what's going on and he needs to quit so he can go do his own thing. Who cares? Some random guy. I felt like it was better as a random throwaway joke to have an employee of this company start to realize, wait, they are at the top of a pyramid. It's like the joke in The Office whenever Jim has Michael explain how it's not a pyramid scheme. He goes up and draws a little pyramid. That's about what the joke could have been. That would have been a funny little throwaway joke, but to have multiple scenes of it, I felt like stretched it out a little bit too long. But of course, the biggest side story in this is probably building up for the rest of the season. We see Elliot go talk to this guy, Billy the Gent, that Sophie apparently used to know. And I kind of figured when Elliot went to go see him that this might build up for the end of the season story, whatever it was going to be. Now, on the one hand, I do find this kind of interesting because it ties into Sophie's backstory, ties in a bit with Arthur Wilde, which did get introduced earlier this season, so we already have it in our minds that she did some stuff that she's not proud of back in the day that maybe she was trying to escape from. But at the same time, we only have 4 episodes left after this. It feels a little weird to be introducing this so late into the game. Now, granted, they could play it into Season 3 as well. More so, the end of this season will be setting up for whoever this guy is supposed to be. I've already forgotten his name. It's really, really sad that I cannot remember names more than a few seconds. But I wasn't really sure where this was going to go. I mean, when Elliot was talking to the guy and he was basically saying that you can't trust Sophie, at first it felt like maybe they were going to build up that Sophie has been playing them this whole time, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If this were its own original series and not based on the original show, and Sophie and Elliot didn't know each other in the original show, if there was some of that, I could maybe buy into the story a bit more and get a bit more interested in the idea that maybe Sophie has been conning them this whole time. But ultimately, we know Sophie well enough, and Elliot knows Sophie well enough. That idea, I don't think, really works. You've not shown Sophie to be this mischievous, backstabbing person. Even when they brought it up earlier this season, it did feel like that was her past. She's moved past it. She's tried to do better, almost in response to what she did all those years ago. So if that's where they're going with it, I'm not really going to be that invested in that story. But if there's something else to this, maybe just this guy that she used to work for is going to try to draw her back in, and that's going to be maybe the conflict here, is whether or not she's going to go back to that lifestyle out of fear. I might be able to buy that a bit more. So we'll see what they decide to do with it. It gives me a little bit of hope that this season might end well, but I think that about does it for this episode. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. What were your thoughts on these 3 episodes? Let me know. We can talk about and discuss all that good stuff. Leave a like and subscribe for future Leverage Redemption reviews. Also check out the channel. We have a lot of other reviews on here, so check those out if you have time. But until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. I will talk to y'all later. Peace out.